Lao Tzu was, we know very little about his life. He was, they say, in charge of the archives of a kingdom called Shu, and reached, well, don't know how old he was when he was becoming bored with the life of the court and the intrigues and the conflicts around him, and so he decided to leave his job and to leave his homeland and just go out into solitude. And the story goes, nobody knows whether it is true, that he left and he got to the border of the kingdom. There was a little border crossing and a gate, and the gatekeeper said, "I'm not going to let you pass unless you write down your wisdom." So he must already have had a certain reputation as a wise man, but he had never written anything. And so all he could do, he said, "Okay, then I'll write it down." We don't know how long it took. He wrote it down. And the gatekeeper let him go, and that is the Tao Te Ching. That is the teaching, and that is the book. And then, according to one story, the last we ever know of him, he was sitting on a water buffalo, riding off into nowhere, and that's the last that anybody ever heard of him. Nobody ever saw him again. That's one version of the story. Another version of the story is that he continued to teach and reached the age of 160 years. The Tao Te Ching is the title of the book, which is not usually translated. People have tried to translate it, but unsuccessfully. Usually they give you subtitles. So it says, Tao Te Ching. One of the traditional subtitles is The Way and Its Virtue. And that's already somewhat of a mistranslation. Although Tao can be translated as the way, you just can't translate Tao. Even if you translate it as way, it's pretty meaningless. And if you're a Chinese person, you're not at a great advantage. You still won't know what Tao is. So you're not at a great advantage. The Tao is something that cannot be named. We'll come to that in a minute. So the subtitle, the way and its virtue. Virtue is a mistranslation of the Te in the Tao Te Ching. Virtue has become a dead word in our language. When did you last say virtue? When did you last use that word? Probably many years ago, if ever. So the word virtue is not alive. What it really refers to is the power. So to translate, it's the power of spirit, of the transcendental dimension. The way and its power is a better subtitle for the Tao Te Ching. The way, how to live. The way to living in alignment with the one power that underlies the universe, the one thing that you cannot name, that is not a thing. Living in alignment with the ultimate, which sometimes is called God, but the moment you call it God, it's not it. You've made it into something. It is not something. It is something that flows through the entire universe, animates the entire universe, and at the same time is beyond it. That is the Tao. And that is something that you can discover within yourself. You can live in a way that connects you with the inner source of all life, of all being. So the way and its power, he is teaching us how to live so that we are in alignment with the power that underlies all life, which, as Lao Tzu says, for lack of a better word, I'll call it the Tao. And the Tao, that's a good thing, because you can't do much with a word that you cannot exactly see what it means. The same way that Buddha used the word emptiness. You cannot worship emptiness. It's a negative term. It negates form. So it's always been the tendency for humans to worship concepts. The concept of God arises in your mind, and then you start talking about God. The concept of God becomes an idol, because it's no more than a thought. So you can't do that with the Tao, because you can't picture it. You can't form an image of it. In the same way that you can't form a picture or an image of emptiness. So that is the transcendental reality that the book points to, and it shows us the way to it. So there's great power there. And the book came to me for the first time in my 20s, maybe mid-20s. Somebody said, have a look at this is interesting. And I looked at it, and something drew me into it, but then I couldn't quite, it was so obscure that I knew there was something hiding there in the book. There was some truth hiding, but I couldn't get it. It was there. And then I put it aside, and okay, I have other things to do now. And then years passed, and then in my early 30s, I rediscovered the book in a different translation. There are many translations available. And not only was the translation better, something had by then taken place within me, an awakening, a shift in consciousness. And through that new consciousness, I looked at the book and I said, wow, he's talking, I know what he's talking about. I realized the depth and the profundity of what those words were saying. And since then, the book in different versions, not the actual physical book, but the Tao Te Ching has never left me. It's always been with me in one way, one form or another. So that's the story behind the Tao Te Ching. And now let's see if we can go a little deeper into it. We are going to use, there are two translations that at the moment are my favorites. We will use Stephen Mitchell's translation, fairly recent, Tao Te Ching. Another translation that I've had for a number of years that I'm very fond of is by Jia Fu Feng and Jane English. They together translated the Tao Te Ching, and that's another beautiful translation. I will be using mainly for today Stephen Mitchell's translation or version of it.